DETV, another DETV sports exclusive. Nick Alessandrini now alongside Jason McCall, and we're here tonight to break down a little bit of NBA playoff play-in game action as well. We're going to touch on the Philadelphia 76ers and a few other things tonight, but to get things started, Jason, how are we feeling on this Monday, just ahead of play-in Tuesday and Wednesday?
Oh, man, it's a great Monday, just looking forward to talking about these play-in games. Got some interesting matchups and ready to get started.
Ready to get started, but before we do get started, we did want to say a special RIP to Dwayne Haskins, who was tragically killed in Florida early Saturday morning. He was there training with other Steelers skill position players. A very tragic loss. The former first-round pick a few years ago of the Washington Commanders had just signed with the Steelers, was in the mix for the starting job. Phenomenal player at Ohio State, and just a very tragic loss that we woke up to Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was definitely a shocking loss. It hit me, to be honest. You don't want to see anyone lose their life before things get started. You know, he was on the right track, he was doing the right thing. Everybody kept talking about how great of a person he was, a great heart, just happy to be around, and just a pleasure whenever you met him. So condolences to his wife and his family, and both the families of the Steelers community and the Washington Commanders community where he was drafted. Also, the Ohio State Buckeye family. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, our thoughts and prayers with the family and friends of Dwayne Haskins. And now we're going to move on here to a little bit more of a positive note with the Delaware Bluecoats, Jason, who are on a little bit of a roll here. Obviously, they took home that Vegas showcase back in January in the first half of the G League season, and they're looking to double up with a nice playoff run here in the spring of 2022. It's back-to-back playoff wins for the Bluecoats, the first ever at home at the Fieldhouse last Tuesday. Two more since then, Jason. They win the Eastern Conference. They are in the G League Finals. That all gets underway tomorrow night. Just quickly, what have you seen from the Bluecoats this week?
I mean, the Bluecoats have been consistent all year long, and it's just been going into the playoffs. They play great defense, but it's their three-point shooting. Once they get hot, they get very hot, as we saw from the last game stats with Charlie Brown, the junior, with 28 points, and of course,
Myles Powell. What a game. He is scoring the lights out. 34 and 25 minutes for Myles Powell, the Seton Hall product. Again, was part of that Westchester Knicks program earlier in the year. Bluecoats played against him at the Fieldhouse. I was there. The next day, they signed him to a 2-day contract, and he's playing very well for the Bluecoats. Myles Powell, again, 34 and 25 minutes. As you mentioned, Charlie Brown Jr. doing it all. Defense, rebounding, 28 for him on the offensive end. And now it's time for the G League Finals. This week, it's going to start tomorrow in Lopezville, Texas, in Game 1 against the Rio Grande Vipers. Game 2 is going to be Thursday here in Delaware at the Fieldhouse. So if you're around, Jason, let's come out and let's have a party Thursday night.
Folks, come out and support. Bluecoats are back in the championship for the second year in a row. Let's show their support. Let's push them over the top. Bring home the title.
Again, if they're able to win tomorrow night, that game on Thursday could be the clinching game for the G League Finals. A lot to happen before then, but make sure if you're able to get out to the Chase Fieldhouse on Thursday, it's championship time for your Delaware Bluecoats. But now let's talk a little NBA. Jason, the reason that we are here today, talk a little NBA play-in action. We've got 4 games this season in the play-in that the NBA introduced last year, and we've got some good ones. We're going to have 2 in the Eastern Conference and 2 in the Western Conference. But before we get there, Jason, let's talk a little bit about the team right up the road, the team that we're all a fan of here, or most of us, I should say, the Philadelphia 76ers. And let's start there, Jason. They get the 5 seed. Joel Embiid today was named the scoring champion, led the NBA with over 30 points per game. First time since the center's done it since Shaquille O'Neal back in '99. Just Joel Embiid, touch a little bit on his season so far.
Yeah, as you stated, I mean, we're seeing what a healthy Embiid can do. This is what the Sixers envisioned with the process years ago, and it's finally coming to fruition the past couple years. Probably should have won MVP last year, but that could be debated. But to average 30.6 a game for the entire season, the first center to lead the league in scoring since Shaq, but also the first center to average 30 in a game, 30 per game in the season since Moses Malone.
There you have it, 82-80.
And what happened that year?
He won the MVP.
But what happened for the Sixers that year?
Championship. And we're looking for another. You can see some Embiid highlights on your screen. The only thing next for him, Jason, is that MVP award. You mentioned last year a tough loss to Jokic. If you're on social media, you're on Twitter at all, you're seeing a lot of Jokic talk again this year. I'll ask you straight up, is Jokic your back-to-back MVP, or is it Embiid this season?
No. The Sixers have a better record. Embiid has passed more of the eye test all year long. He's put the Sixers on his back. And without Jokic, the Nuggets can do a little bit of damage, but without Embiid on the floor, the Sixers wouldn't be anywhere close to where they are right now.
I completely agree with you. And Joel Embiid is both of our MVPs here for 2022. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the NBA does in just a little bit. I believe the NBA, or they usually announce the NBA awards sometime in June now as they have the NBA award show. So we're going to have to wait till then to see if Embiid takes home those MVP honors. So let's talk a little bit about the Sixers. They get that 4 seed. What does that mean? They will be playing the 5 seed Toronto Raptors. And what does that mean? That means that Matisse Thybulle will be unavailable for those games in Toronto. Obviously, games 3 and 4 of the opening series with the Raptors. He is unvaccinated. He did say he got 1 vaccination shot, but that was it. After that, he got no more. So he is unable to play. How big of a loss is that for the Sixers here?
Very big loss for the Sixers, as Thybulle is their best defender on the perimeter, and the Raptors have a bunch of perimeter players who are in between 6'7" and 6'9", 6'10" range, built similar to Thybulle, but can score, rebound, assist, and he is a big piece of the Sixers' defensive scheme and strategy. So it's going to be tough, and the Raptors have actually had the Sixers' number this season, so it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I think the Sixers will win this matchup, but I will not be surprised if Toronto moves on to the second round, just based on the Thybulle factor having to go back to Toronto and playing more than 2 games.
Again, I'll get your pick in a certain amount of games here in just a little bit. While we stay on the Philadelphia 76ers, the Raptors, they started 14-17 this year, but since then 34-17. They've really found their stride. Obviously, Nick Nurse knows what he's doing, former NBA champion coach, former G League champion coach, and the Raptors are a hot team right now, and they're going to need, the Sixers is James Harden to really show up. He's been taking a lot of heat, a lot of pressure here from Philadelphia, even major markets throughout the country. Shooting percentage was good when he first got here through the first 10 games, about 50 or more percent. That has come down to around the mid-30s% in terms of field goal percentage. Maybe a step slower than we're used to seeing James Harden in the past. What have you seen from James Harden, Jason, and how do you think he'll do come playoff time with all that pressure?
Well, I would say with James Harden, it's time to put up or shut up. You've been on all these different teams. In OKC, you had Russ, KD. Houston, you had Chris Paul. Brooklyn, you had KD again and Kyrie. Now you have Embiid. What will be your excuse this year if you don't step up? It's time for Harden to turn it on and leave it on for the entire playoffs and hopefully take the Sixers to the NBA Finals.
And Jason, I'm with you. I agree with you. I think James Harden will step up in the playoffs. Obviously a little bit slow down the stretch of the regular season. But if you know James Harden, you know, maybe you kind of expect that a little bit. But I think he'll turn it on when they do need him. Some stats for you. We're going back to Matisse Thybulle. Again, Philadelphia allowing 105.6 points per 100 possessions with Thybulle. That number climbs up to 116. That's over 10 more points when he's not on the floor. And James Harden have outscored their opponents with him and Embiid on the floor by 15.9 points, the 5th best mark among 2-man combinations in the NBA. So obviously still some success there, but Sixers just 7-6 with him in uniform against teams that have reached the playoffs or play-in. So 7-6, an interesting number there. Does that kind of say anything to you, Jason?
It said, to me, it looks like they're playing down to the competition at times.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you there.
And I'll say that for them to get out of this series, they cannot play down to the competition. They're going to have to start fast, score early and often, and play the great defense that Doc Rivers' teams are known to play.
Well, you led me to my next question. Before we move on to the play-ins, that brings up Doc Rivers. A lot of pressure, been getting pretty testy with the media following some of these post-game press conferences. We saw it again last night. Doc Rivers, a strength or a weakness? There's a lot of talk about him maybe making the trip out to L.A. to maybe be the Lakers coach. Nick Nurse in that conversation, Juwan Howard, some names we heard today. What is Doc Rivers going to have to do, Jason, in this playoff run to get maybe another shot next year? And will he be back with the Sixers next year? I ask you straight up.
He'll be back with the Sixers. Philly, You'll be fine. Doc is not leaving another city to go somewhere else again, especially back out to LA. He was there for all those years already with the Clippers. And then media marketing in LA, I think he's fine where he is. But also I'll say that for the Sixers to be successful in this playoff run, aside from the defense, the offensive schemes have to be a little bit better, have to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother, and you have to involve Maxey, and you have to get Tobias Harris going. If Tobias Harris gets going in the playoffs, it's going to be a scary sight for all teams the Sixers play.
So going back to what you said, you talked about scheme. Does that go back to Doc Rivers now as well? It all starts with the coach when you're talking scheme, right?
It goes back to Doc Rivers some, but also it comes down to the players when they're just them having the moxie to want to play. You know, if you want to win a ring, prove it in the playoffs. The regular season is fine. That's just for seeding. But now is the time to step up. When the lights are the brightest is when we need to see the stars. So if you have a guy making $100 million in the contract like Harris, you have James Harden with his contract, you have Joel, the process Embiid, who should be MVP again. Let's say that, Joel for MVP. Those pieces together with the supporting cast, sky's the limit for the Sixers.
And Jason, you talked about Doc wanting to stay in Philadelphia next year. Obviously, if it's his choice, if you also mentioned it's going to be a tough first-round series with the Toronto Raptors. If they struggle, maybe go to a tough 7-game series, maybe just pull it out, or even lose, is Doc Rivers relieved of his duties?
No. They
So,
just know
even
that,
with a first-round playoff exit.
even with it, because some teams just have your number, and you're going to have to overcome it to get out the series. So some teams will push you to a 7-game series, and who knows? You could go to a 7-game series in round 1 and then sweep the next 2 rounds. So you never know. But as long as you get out the first round, anything is up for grabs after that.
And obviously some other stats for you regarding the Sixers and the Raptors. In each of those post-All-Star losses to the Raptors, the Sixers have lost 2 since the All-Star break to Toronto. Joel Embiid has had a positive plus-minus in every one of those games. They are outscoring the Raptors by 15 points in totality when he is on the floor. But Jason, when he comes off, they're getting outscored 61-36 in just 21 minutes. That shows you how instrumental Joel Embiid has been for the 76ers this season. So he's going to have to play a lot of minutes against the Raptors in the opening series. We'll see how it pays off for the Sixers against Toronto.
We'll see.
So let's keep it moving here as we're going to head to the play-in tournament. That begins tomorrow evening. We'll have 2 games Tuesday, 2 games Wednesday, and then the NBA playoff format will begin on Saturday. So Jason, let's start with our first play-in of the tournament. And maybe a team you might have thought at the beginning of the year might not be playing in the play-in tournament. That's the number 7 seed right now, the Brooklyn Nets. So the Nets, the vaccine mandate gone from Barclays Center. Kyrie is back. He's able to play home games. You got Kevin Durant. You get the trade. You got Drummond and Seth Curry. They were able to move from the 10 to the 7 seed in almost a week, the past week here, getting ready for the NBA playoffs. And Jason, they are going to get the Cleveland Cavaliers. A hot start for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but kind of slowed down the stretch, but you can attest some of that due to injuries. Jared Allen still hurt, dealing with that sprained finger. Evan Mobley missing games down the stretch of the regular season. But 7 Brooklyn, 8 Cleveland in that first play-in game, Jason.
Yeah, like you said, both teams honestly weren't expected to be here. Cleveland obviously has been a playoff team in quite some time, so you never knew what you're going to get from them. But then with the Brooklyn Nets, this was everybody's preseason favorite. And even though they're a 7 seed right now, there are still a lot of people's favorite to make it all the way.
Yeah, and let me add to that right now. Right now, they are currently the 3rd shortest odds in Vegas to win the championship. So what does that say? They are picked the 3rd team to win the NBA title. They got 2 teams in front of them. I want to say the Suns and maybe
Milwaukee.
The Bucks is what I would guess. But they are the 3rd team picked in Vegas to win the championship. That says it right there.
Yeah, I mean, the star power. When you can field a team with KD and Kyrie, that says a lot. And then you have the surrounding pieces. You have Patty Mills. You have, like you said, you have a Drummond. You have Seth Curry, Bruce Brown. They have a very good bench, a bunch of company players that can come in and spell them, so they don't have to play heavy minutes of the stars. And you still have the Ben Simmons factor. Will he play or won't he play?
And that's a good question. Now, again, it was reported today that Ben Simmons has a chance to be back, not for the play-in, but a chance to play in the first round. So, again, he's trying to work back from those back issues that he suffered during his time off with the Sixers and with the Brooklyn Nets. Jason, How big of a difference or big of an impact would it be if the Nets were to get Ben Simmons again? It's not going to be tomorrow night, but if they're able to win and advance sometime this weekend potentially.
If the Nets are able to get Ben Simmons at any point in this playoffs, it would be a godsend for them because they are not the best defensive unit.
That's saying a lot, yeah, absolutely.
And you can put Ben Simmons with the second team, doesn't have to be relied on as a scorer. He can just facilitate and play his excellent defense that he always does, and excellent rebounder as well. So you can kind of mix and match him with a lot of the lineups. And I think it'll prove huge. I mean, he's, 6'10" with like a 7'4" wingspan? You can't teach that on defense.
No, you can't. Again, a nominee for Defensive Player of the Year the last 2 seasons, so he will have a defensive impact on Brooklyn. Obviously, he's able to come back in that first-round series. I'm going to take a little bit of a stance on that, Jason, though. I think if I'm the Nets, I hold him out. I don't even know if I necessarily want him back. I would hold him out, one, for the health, and 2, we saw Ben Simmons in a playoff environment the last few years. It didn't necessarily help, and I'm not sure if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you want his first game appearance or first game with the Nets to be in a playoff series. I think that could not only make him a little bit mentally off, but also maybe physically on the court going forward. I mean, that could all be put to rest if he comes out and he plays well. I just don't see it happening, especially in a playoff scenario.
Well, I mean, I can understand why you would say that, and I actually, like I said, I do agree that this shouldn't be the first setting for him playing with his new team.
Yeah, and that's my point.
It shouldn't be. And if his back is messed up, we just had problems before. Maybe he started this whole rookie season due to his back issue. If it's messed up, let him recuperate, let him recover. He's only, 24, 25? Yeah, he still can kind of heal a little bit.
He's got some time, that's for sure.
So
yeah.
you want him for the long haul. So if you don't need him, rest him.
We'll have to wait and see what the Nets decide to do, how he feels come the weekend. But back to the task at hand, Nets and Cavaliers, 7 o'clock tomorrow night, the first play-in game of the NBA playoffs. It's actually not considered the playoffs just yet. Winner, they will get the 7 seed. The loser of that game will play the winner of Charlotte-Atlanta Friday night for that 8 spot. So again, we talked about the Nets. They're pretty good favorites in this one, Jason. They're given 8.5 points. That tells you kind of what Vegas expects the game to go. Almost a double-digit win they have for the Brooklyn Nets. You look at the records, the Cavs, they have lost the series with the Nets 1-3 this year. So Brooklyn took 3 out of 4 games in the regular season. The Cavs just 9-15 since the All-Star break. Jared Allen, the injury, maybe they'll get him back with, like you said, Brooklyn's hoping to get Simmons back. The Cavs are hoping to get All-Star Jared Allen back eventually here shortly. Darius Garland, what a year he's having, Jason. 21.5 points, 8.6 assists, an NBA All-Star. And then you have the rookie Evan Mobley, 15-8 for him. But check out the changes in some of these statistics. You look at the defense,
I was looking
Jason,
at that.
And sixth best defense in the NBA through the first half of the year. Some of those injuries, Allen, Mobley, etc., they dropped to the 7th worst defense by the end of the regular season.
Yeah, it was a very huge drop-off, but again, that came from the injuries to Mobley, the injuries to Jared Allen, and let's not forget you lost Colin Sexton for the year.
That's right, for the
they
whole
lost
year.
Dean Wade for the year. A lot of their players who play defense and come into the second unit. So for the Cleveland to get here, this is their first playoff appearance in the post-LeBron era. So it's a good season for them. Post-LeBron, post-Kyrie era, great season for them. But if they have any chance in this series, they're going to need Jared Allen to go against his former team and prove to them why he should have kept him in Brooklyn.
I agree with you. Jared Allen's been having a great year, obviously an all-star. Mobley having a fantastic impact in just his first year in the NBA. Cleveland's got some talent. They've got some young talent, and they've got some length. They've got 3 7-footers when healthy in that starting lineup in Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley, as well as Jared Allen. They've given team fits, as we talked about in the first half of the season, but the injuries really hurting them down the stretch of the regular season. We'll see what they can do come tomorrow night. You look at the Nets. They won that series, as we mentioned, 3-1, 13-10 since the All-Star break. And Kevin Durant, Jason, has been one of the hottest players in the world, you could say. 30 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists.
What did you say a few years ago? Y'all know who I am. We know who he is. This is Kevin Durant, who is regarded as, if not the best player in the world, is in the top 2. And a lot of times he's not number 2 in most people's rankings.
Yeah, especially now in time. Now he's starting to even get above LeBron in some tiers. Is that how you view it here? Again, a little off topic, off script here. LeBron or Durant, who's the best player in the world?
I'm going to throw a name out there we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
It's not LeBron. It's not Durant. What I've seen the past couple seasons, the Greek Freak, Giannis is the best player in the world.
And how about that? We are going to leave that there because that's a discussion for a whole nother day. But the Greek Freak definitely up there as well as third in the MVP odds as it stands right now. So again, Kyrie is back, 27.5 points. He's been shooting the ball lights out from beyond the arc. He's starting to get into that rhythm. Now he's able to play in those home games at Barclays Center. Curry averaging 15 points per game with the trade over to Brooklyn. What is going to be the key or the X factor if you're the Brooklyn Nets at home against Cleveland?
Honestly, it's going to be Kyrie's defense. We're not talking about Kyrie's defense enough this year. When he plays, he has a plus defensive rating when he's on the court. So he's actually buying into playing defense, which you would never attribute to Kyrie in previous seasons.
Oh, yeah.
But with that scheme, what they're trying to do, I believe Kyrie's defense will be the X factor, but also the shooting off the bench with Patty Mills and Seth Curry, and the rebounding of Drummond off the bench as well.
And Drummond's definitely going to have to rebound. Again, he's going to be battling 3 7-footers potentially out there for the Cleveland Cavaliers. If the Cavaliers are going to have success, they're going to need Jared Allen back. They're going to need him healthy. They're going to need to rebound and play some great defense against those Brooklyn Nets. Again, one of the highest-powered offenses in the association. So that's going to take us to another game. Let's stick with Tuesday night, and let's get to some more play-in action. That's going to be the Charlotte Hornets and the Atlanta Hawks. And we'll just jump right to Wednesday, actually, 7 p.m. It's go to the Eastern Conference. We'll just stay in the East. And that's with a team that made a run all the way to the conference finals last year, led by Ice Trae Young. The Atlanta Hawks, they get a 9 seed right now that gets them in the play-in, where they will meet LaMelo Ball and the 10-seeded Charlotte Hornets. Jason, the Hawks, a small 4.5-point favorite in this game.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
And what, you don't like the line?
I don't like the line. I don't like the line. I think it's going to be a lot closer, and I actually have the Hornets beating the Hawks.
And another interesting part, Jason, the Hawks, 19 of the last 22 victories at home. So they're playing hot at home. They are going to have the home game as they are the 9 seed against Charlotte on Wednesday night. Except Atlanta has just 1 road win over a postseason team in either conference in all of 2022. So it works out. Yes, Atlanta has exactly 1 road win over a postseason team in either conference in the year 2022. So it's pretty good that they have a home game here in the play-in. But what does that mean come if they're able to advance past that?
It means a lot. You can't win on the road. You can't win a championship.
That's for sure.
There's no way to get around that. You can't win on the road. You will not go far at any given point in time, especially in the playoffs.
Well, let me tell you this now, Jason. That 1 road win did come back on January 23rd against guess who? The Charlotte Hornets. So that 1 win was on the road against the Hornets, but luckily for the Hawks, they'll be at home Wednesday night at 7 o'clock welcoming in Charlotte. Let's talk a little bit about the Hornets, Jason. The Hawks and the Hornets, they split the season series 2-2. 14-8 are the Hornets since that All-Star break. Miles Bridges, what a year he's having. We were talking a little about him before we went on the air. I mean, averaging over 20 points per game, 26 against the Hawks, one of the best teams, or he usually plays really good against Atlanta. They're going to need him.
Yeah, Miles Bridges has had a breakout season. He's been building to this for the past few years. This is a contract year. He took a 1-year deal as a prove-it for this season.
He's doing it.
He's earned himself a lot of money come this offseason.
Yes, he has. Again, Miles Bridges, 20.2 points per game, 7 rebounds, and again, that includes over 26 points per game against the Atlanta Hawks this season. LaMelo Ball, you know what he's capable of, over 20 points per game, 6.7 rebounds, 7.7 assists. He fills up the stat sheet. Rozier, the 3rd over 19 points per game scorer. He's just over 19 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. And then you got Kelly Oubre chipping in with 15 points per game as well. So if there's one thing the Hornets can do is that they can score. And again, one of the only teams where every starter has played in at least 70 games this season. Wow. So the Hornets are able to stay healthy, and that can be big come playoff time. One of the fastest pace in basketball. They lead the league in assists. But that defense, Jason, that's where it kind of gets the Hornets one of the worst.
It is atrocious. They are one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and the numbers prove it. They were 16th rated last year, and they fell 8 spots to 24th this year.
And usually that improves when some of those young guys have another year, right? When you think of Borrego?
Normally it improves, but if you're focusing on scoring so much, and those defensive rating numbers can be misleading. Sometimes a team's best defense is actually their offense, and they can outscore you. And that's how they have to win the game.
Yeah, that is definitely how the Hornets are going to have to win the game. You heard that stat, 16th to 24th. That's the second worst of any play-in or playoff team left in the field. So the Hornets, they're going to have to outscore their opponents. And I mean, even just last week, they allowed 144 on back-to-back games over the weekend. So tough for the Hornets defensively. They're going to need to outscore you to win. So let's focus on the Hawks now. Again, they split that season series 2-2 with the Hornets. Trae Young, over 28 points per game this season, almost 10 assists at 9.7. Top 5 in the league in scoring and assists, and second in offensive points added behind Nikola Jokic. So he is having an absolutely dynamite offensive season.
It's a little cold in here.
It is a little cold.
A little cold in here. We talk about Trae Young. He actually led the NBA in total points and total assists.
How about that?
Last time he did that, he was in college, Oklahoma, when he led the NCAA.
That's right.
In total scoring and total assists. So a great year for Trae Young. Then you have John Collins, who wasn't playing, who's still hurt.
Yeah,
that
could be
and
he
the
was
deciding
big against
factor.
the Sixers last year, as we saw.
It could be the deciding factor for them. With numbers over the season, 16-7. But then you have the resurgence of Bogdanović. Ended up getting healthy throughout the year, ended up averaging 15.1 points a game. Then you have DeAndre Hunter at 13.4 points a game. DeAndre Hunter, defensive stopper, but also a capable scorer when called upon. So they're going to need all of their big guns. They have a chance of winning this game against the Charlotte Hornets.
Again, Atlanta, 26th ranked defensive rating, second in offensive rating. So those kind of cancel out with the offense and the defense. Again, Hornets and Hawks up in the top 6 of points per game. So it's going to be an offensive shootout on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Jason, your X factor and your pick.
X factor for the Hawks and Hornets game. I'm going to go Scary Terry Rozier.
Terry Rozier going to have to play well if the Hornets want a chance to win that game. For me, again, you know what you're going to get with Trae Young. You kind of know what you're going to get with LaMelo Ball and the Hornets. I like the Hawks. We saw what they did last year in the postseason. I'm going to go with Atlanta. And X factor, I mean, it's got to be one of those other role player guys. John Collins is out, as you alluded to earlier. Clint Capella's going to have to step up, rebound the basketball. DeAndre Hunter's going to have to play great defense and hit the three, a little 3 and D. And then, like you said, Bogdanović at 15 points per game. He lit it up a little bit in the playoff series against the Sixers. He can score the basketball. But I think it's going to be 3-point shooting for Atlanta. If they're able to knock it down from beyond the arc, I have them maybe even going an extra round or two.
I have a name for you to mention on the Hawks. Kevin Huerter.
Kevin Huerter. And again, he was great in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, Kevin Huerter. He's a
Shooter.
scorer. He's a shooter. He's a shooter. So if Kevin Huerter gets hot and Trae can kind of facilitate and make his way.
We've seen it before.
You've seen it before. I mean, they were in the conference finals last year.
Yep.
So
we'll see.
anything can happen.
Again, Wednesday night, Hornets and Hawks, 9 versus 10 in the Eastern play-in. Let's keep it moving back to Tuesday, but over to the Western Conference, where we have the 7-seeded Timberwolves at 46 and 36, where they'll get the 8-seeded LA Clippers, who finish at 42 and 40. T-Wolves small favorites in this one, -3.5 if you like to look at the lines. Again, 9:30 p.m. tip-off on Tuesday. But again, we like to say the line just to give you an idea of how Vegas predicts the game going. Again, what do you think of the T-Wolves being 3.5-point favorites here?
I don't like this line either, honestly. I think it's going to be a closer game than that, but I can see why. They have the T-Wolves at 3.5 favored, but those games they played this year, most of those games were without Paul George and without Kawhi. So this season series is misleading.
Yeah, absolutely true. Again, you look at that. The Timberwolves took the season series 3-1, as Jason mentioned. Tough without the star power over there with the LA Clippers. Minnesota has won more games this year than it has in the past 2 years combined. So think about that. Obviously, Anthony Edwards improving, Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell back and healthy at 18 points per game for the Timberwolves. That's going to help them out. Their offensive rating went from 25th to 7th this year, so improvement there. And then defense from 28th to 13th. That's what you want to see with new head coach Chris Finch. Improvement on both sides of the ball. And Malik Beasley, Anthony Edwards, and Russell each shoot 8 or more threes per game, and they all shoot better than the league average. That's going to determine how they do.
Yeah, they can score. I didn't know that they were that great from a three-point range.
At least those three guys are.
At least those three guys are.
Those three guys are.
And then you have Karl-Anthony Towns, who's a renaissance man as far as the big man is concerned. Similar game to Embiid, if you will, inside, outside, can pretty much do everything on the floor. And he's their anchor. They will go as far as he can go. But I like that the fact you mentioned Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley is one of their glue guys. He's been there for a while.
And interesting stuff,
he just
obviously,
does everything
this year.
they need to do. They need to do. So I really like Malik Beasley on this roster. And I like what the Timberwolves have done in the past couple of years of bringing in a few vets, sprinkling in them around their drafted players. And it looks like it's going to be a great, well, not series rather, but it's a great one-game matchup.
Yeah, again, if you're watching this live, head coach Chris Finch signing an extension today to remain with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they like what they've got building over there in Minnesota. 15-8 since the All-Star break. And again, the thing that's going to be the downfall of them, we talked about how good the offense is. They commit second most fouls per game, and they rank in the bottom third in field goal percentage and turnovers. So the key for them, don't turn the ball over.
And don't foul.
And don't foul. We'll see if they can do that against the Clippers. But now let's talk a little bit about the LA Clippers. Paul George is back. They're going to have him for the playoffs. What a boost that's going to give Ty Lue and company. Again, they're the 25th ranked offense coming into the playoffs, but due partly because of no Kawhi Leonard and no Paul George. So they get Paul George back, Norman Powell, and who knows about Kawhi Leonard. So maybe the two best scorers on the team are going to be in action.
Yeah, the Clippers have had an interesting season. I'm surprised that they actually were able to field a team all year long, all the injuries they went through again.
And above 500.
And above 500. And they're in the play-in. But when you add PG-13 back to the lineup, he may be called PG-13, but his game is NC-17 when he's on the court playing against top-tier talent in the NBA. But you have him at 24.3 points a game. Like you said, Norman Powell, great pickup for them, at 21.4. And then you have Reggie Jackson. Not Mr. October, but Mr. April.
Mr. June,
April, May, and June.
He has a great playoffs. Yes, he does.
Playoffs.
That's for sure. Again, keep an eye on him. He may be one of the keys for the Clippers going forward. We're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the NBA, but a poor rebounding team, a poor passing team if you look at the assists. So we're going to have to see how they perform in that game. Again, Paul George, over 24 points per game since he's been back. Norman Powell over 21 points per game. And then, like you said, Mr. Playoff Reggie Jackson, they'll look for him to chip in. He's up over 17 points per game. So Clippers, again, going to battle that with the Timberwolves. Timberwolves slight favorites there. Jason, X Factor and pick in that Western Conference play-in.
It's not often when you say a star player is the X Factor, but Paul George is the X Factor in this game. If his stamina is up to snuff and he's clicking early, it's going to be a long night for the Timberwolves. And let's give Coach Tyronn Lue some love for Coach of the Year. I mean, doing what he did with this roster.
I'm going to say again, Ty Lue, what a job he has. You mentioned it. He's definitely going to be, in my opinion, an option for Coach of the Year. Like you just said, to have that team over 500 with that squad they had, maybe missing your three best players, that is so tough to do. And they're able to do it, mate, looking at a potential postseason berth with the LA Clippers. Again, Luke Kennardy's the best three-point shooter in the NBA. They've got him on the Clippers as well. Going to be a good one. So who's your pick then, Jay?
I know I said what I said about the Clippers, but we need some youth in this NBA playoffs. I'm going with the Timberwolves.
You know what? I'm going with the Timberwolves as well. Again, I'm not sure what it is. I like what Minnesota is doing over there. Anthony Edwards is going to be my X factor in this one. Again, he's a killer. He's a scorer on the hardwood, and we'll see what he can do. I think Towns, you know what he's going to give you consistently. Edwards going to need to score in that game against the Clippers. I think Paul George versus Anthony Edwards is going to be a good one in that Western Conference play. And I'm going with the Timberwolves as well, though, just like Jason. So we both picked that one there. So let's head to the final play-in game, 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The New Orleans Pelicans, your 10 seed, are going to get this, or 9 seed are going to get the San Antonio Spurs, your 10 seed. So these are the last two teams in the Western Conference. Both, I can't say under 500. The Pelicans, or both are under 500, excuse me. Pelicans, though, Jason, 5.5-point favorites in this one over Greg Popovich and the Spurs. 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. Again, the Pelicans, since the All-Star break, 13-10, and it was big for them when they acquired C.J. McCollum at the trade deadline.
Yeah, acquiring C.J. McCollum really changed their playoff hopes and playoff positioning. It bumped the Lakers out. I'm sorry. Did we say that?
That's right. And we didn't have a chance to talk about the Lakers. That's a whole. We can go a whole show on what the LA Lakers have been this year. But for the sake of time, we're going to skip them tonight.
Yeah. So the addition of C.J. McCollum, pairing him with Brandon Ingram, and them staying afloat all year without having Zion, and they're just like we talked about off camera earlier. The Pelicans are a very long team They can play excellent defense. They can play passing lanes. They can switch to pick and roll. They can switch out 1 through 5 and not really give up too much height, not too much girth either. So this game could be a scary matchup for the Spurs, as the Spurs they're not the Spurs of yesteryear with the offensive efficiency and the scoring and that one go-to player. Although DeJounte Murray, I know you'll go into.
He's phenomenal.
But this is going to be, honestly, it's a toss-up. Whoever gets hot first and whoever can play decent enough defense throughout the game is going to win this game. But I'll let you take a stack.
Again, Pelicans 19th ranked offense, 18th ranked defense, so nothing too intimidating there from that standpoint. They're not a great three-point shooting team either. But again, they've got some scores. McCollum, 24 points per game. Ingram, 23 points per game. And then you got Valanciunas, who was a big addition from the Grizzlies last year, playing very well in New Orleans. 18 points and 11.5 rebounds. He's averaging a double-double. He'll be big for the Pelicans in this one as well. The Spurs, 11-12 since that All-Star break. Again, the Pelicans won the season series 3-1 over San Antonio. But here's that guy we were just talking about, DeJounte Murray. 21 points, 8.3 rebounds, and 9.2 assists. Ooh. That's almost averaging a triple-double. And then Keldon Johnson, the Team USA member, 17 and 6.1. But DeJounte Murray, it all starts with him.
It all starts and ends with DeJounte Murray. He's had injury problems early on, but now he's finally healthy. And you're seeing what a healthy DeJounte Murray can do, along with Keldon Johnson, Jakob Poeltl, even players like Lonnie Walker, who contributes on the Spurs team. So they have to score by collective. You have to have at least 4 or 5 players over at least 15, 16 points to even give them a chance to win this game against the Pelicans. Maybe they do it. We'll see, but it's going to be another great game. I mean, all of these games here that we have for the play-in, very good. I mean,
that should be good games.
I mean, last year you had Steph Curry in the play-in. This year you have Katie and Kyrie in the play-in. You have Anthony Davis. So you have the stars in the play-in. So NBA, league officials, you got this one right with having the play-in tournament, but you're still having stars play even in these opening round games, if you will.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jason. There was a lot of discussion about the play-in. LeBron James was openly not happy about a play-in tournament with some other teams. A lot of backlash, if you will, from the public. It's working out, it seems, right now, at least in the terms of the NBA itself. Some great games with some great players in some of these play-in matchups as we progress later in the week. Again, Spurs are 17th in offensive rating, 16th in defensive rating. And again, they run the 6th fastest pace and shoot the 2nd most shots in the NBA. So they're going to try to get out and run with DeJounte Murray. But again, their defense, very poor as well this season. We'll see what Greg Popovich can come up in a game against the Pelicans. And Jason, how important is that when you have a coach like Greg Popovich for a game like this where it's one and done against the Pelicans?
Well, with Coach Pop, it speaks for itself. His resume with the Spurs, 5 championships with the Spurs, and his resume with Team USA. He's one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach in modern basketball era. I mean, you can kind of argue him versus Phil Jackson, and you're not wrong either way.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
when it comes to X's and O's, to get the most out of his players, I think he's still one of the best at doing so. So if we can bring his normal pop magic to this current game that we're going to have against the Pelicans, anything can happen. Sky's the limit for them. They just have to play smart, play efficient, but play that normal brand of Spurs basketball they were accustomed to seeing over the years.
Again, you mentioned efficiency, name of the game for the Spurs. They're 8th in points, the Pelicans 20th, a big discrepancy there. And then turnovers, just 12 per game for San Antonio. That's good for 6th in the NBA. The Pelicans over 13 turnovers per game. That's 17th. So again, we're going to see that one as well between the Spurs and the Pelicans in the 9-10 matchup in that play-in. Jason, X Factor and pick.
All these players are X factors.
It's that kind of game.
It's
right?
that kind of game. I'm going to go with another star again. I'm going to go with C.J. McCollum. I think C.J. needs to score 40 for him to win, for the Pelicans to win. I think C.J. needs a 40-point game. I think Brandon Ingram needs about 20, 25, but I think C.J. needs to score at least 40 points.
And who you going with?
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin. That's it. That's literally it.
Flip a coin.
All of these matchups are going to be close matchups. They're all going to be great matchups, and that's why there is a play-in. So Pelicans and Spurs, I'm going to go with – that's a tough one. You said flip a coin. I'm going to make a pick. I'm going to go with the Pelicans. I'm going to go with the team that's playing a little bit better right now. I know I might be waking up Thursday morning going, why did I bet against Greg Popovich in a play-in game? But we're going to stick with the Pelicans. I'm going to go Pels in that matchup with San Antonio. So there you have it for our 4 play-in matchups. You got a little bit update on the 76ers. So a lot going on this week. The NBA playoffs are set to begin on Saturday. Again, the play-in games are Tuesday and Wednesday, but also some big stuff going up on in Philly tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow night, U.S. women's national team, soccer team, will be playing a friendly up in Chester against Uzbekistan.
How about that? Getting some action in Philly. That game at Subaru Park, so that's pretty cool. If you're free and a fan of women's soccer, make sure you get out there and check that one out as well. And make sure to be on the lookout later in the week for our complete NBA playoff preview show coming at you either Friday or Saturday morning ahead from the playoffs beginning Saturday afternoon. So for Nick Alessandrini and Jason McCall, our production team, Dennis, Ivan, and Spence, we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Check out those play-in games and make it out to the Fieldhouse on Thursday for the G League Finals with the Delaware Blue Coats.
Forget it. Want to see you there.